All right, everyone. All right, everyone. Sometimes with this technology, right? Okay, everyone. So, welcome to Empower Your Evolution. On this series, should I say, or talk about Empower Your Evolution, I want to share with you something that I've learned. And this is something that I learned about transition. There's something that I learned the hard way, that transitions, they do not just change your life. Oh my. Okay. In that, again, when it comes to transitions, they do not they're not just something that you go through. There's something that I learned the hard way, and that transitions just don't change your life, y'all. They don't. They change who you are. And I didn't get that from no textbook or anything that I had learned, from a book or a course. This is real life. Real life. I learned this, y'all, through a breakup. When I was crying for 40 days and 40 nights, and I'm going to say it was the residual effect of that. Because it wasn't like, oh, I stopped crying. It was like, oh, okay, everything's just fine. I have all of this enlightenment. Yeah, I got a lot of enlightenment, but you still got to go through the path, you know? And the other thing that I learned too, that it wasn't just a breakup, but it was also through my parents' medical mayhem, through their mayhem, and also through being in this field and holding space for others. What I realized, what all of those things reveal, that I was quietly losing myself. And I distinctly remember when I discovered that, y'all. One day I was out to lunch with one of my friends. They were traveling and we met up and went out to lunch. And they were talking on and on and on, sharing things. And it was like the way that they were sharing, I don't even remember what they were sharing, but it was how they were talking. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, wait a minute. I used to talk that way. I used to be that way. Oh my gosh, what happened to me? And that's when I realized I lost myself. And for some of you who may know me, who've heard my story, you've heard me talk about crying for 40 days and 40 nights and all of that. And that is what propelled me into this self-care journey, this self-care movement. But it wasn't only that. And I do want to say, when it comes to the self-care and when it comes to me losing myself, it wasn't like the breakup, but the breakup what helped me to reveal that I lost myself. Who knows what I was or who I was in that relationship. But here's the thing, too, is that the other thing that it revealed, not only did I lose myself, but what I would say over time, it has revealed there are two kinds of transitions. There's the external transitions, the things that happen outside of us, the breakup, the diagnosis, career shifts, and a season ending without your permission. Because y'all know that sometimes things be happening in our lives. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't volunteer for this. And then sometimes even for the things that you do volunteer with, right? But the other thing when it comes to transition, the second transition is that one that is internal. the one that was internal. Again, it was that one when I realized I lost myself. I lost myself. And it's that moment when you realize that you can't keep being who you was. That's the thing, y'all. Sometimes, and I'm looking around in the room here, sometimes you experience something, but you're trying to hold on who you were, not who you're becoming. I'm gonna pause on that. You're holding on to who you were. Yeah, your core of who you are at the core and at your heart should stay. But some other things, your patterns, limited beliefs, and a lot of other things, they need to leave, you know? They need to go behind the door that was closed. And so you cannot keep being who you were and then trying to survive where you're going, because that is what keeps you stuck. It keeps you on the sideline, y'all. It really does. It keeps you on the sideline. Because on the other side, that is where things happen. That is where discovery happens, because you cannot discover who you are if you're on the sideline, if you're stalling, if you're in survivor mode. Now, I do want to share this story too. In that moment when I realized that I lost myself, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who am I? That is when I decided to change my name. I said, oh, let me get back to my roots. And you're like, what are you talking about, Sharon? Changing your name. Well, for some of you who may not know, again, I talk about the breakup, but there was a time in my life when I was married, y'all. Yes, I was married. Of course, when I say I was married, that means that was a divorce. But I'd always said, if I ever get married, if I ever get a divorce, I will keep my married name. You're like, Sharon, well, why? Okay, do you all know what my name is? Sharon Denise Brown. Just look it up. Yo, my name is so common. Even in high school, it started in middle school. Or someone, they didn't have the exact name, but their name was very close to mine. And even in college, and I've even had things to happen because people had the same name as me, y'all. But when I realized that I lost myself, I said, oh, let me get back to my roots. So I went ahead and changed my name back to what I was born with. But I just thought that was a funny story, because it's like, oh yeah, even though it wasn't the name that made me lose myself, but I would say it is in the name of a part of who I am, because that name, even though I may have gone through some things, but it has carried me, and I wanted to get back to its root. And so when it comes to transition, again, that was a transition in and of itself, and realizing something was no longer, ooh, y'all see that? Realizing something was no longer serving me. So I had to let it go. Not that I was keeping it, definitely not for the other person. And I pretty much feel like, oh, my identity isn't in a name. But at that time, it had a different meaning. Y'all, these are gems dropping here. Gems. There are gems dropping here. So when it comes to transitioning, you meet different parts of yourself, y'all. There are parts of yourself that you ignore, that you postpone, and you outgrew. Stop trying to hold on to the old you. And I know it's easily said than done, right? But part of that, y'all, is because your nervous system, your nervous system starts talking louder. It makes you, that's where that stop, I call them hard stops and soft stops. The hard stops, you're like, oh, I'm not going across that street. Y'all, for some of y'all, crossing the street is getting on video, marketing, pitching yourself, reaching out, talking to people, networking. Sometimes crossing the street is being healthy and well. When it comes to eating healthy, when it comes to exercising, when it comes to doing something new. But anytime you notice your nervous system, and everybody has different signs. It can be aches and pains, but most of the time, I want to say it be in that stomach. So, that butterflies in your stomach is something, or your heartbeat. It's like, whoo, I don't want to do that. You feel it in your body. But one thing that I would tell you when it comes to transition, y'all, is that when you do sit down, again, allow your nervous system to sit down. When you do sit down, your values get clear when you sit down. That is why it's so important to be able to settle. This is another reason why I talk about self-care and advocate and have a space for self-care too. And your calling starts knocking hard. How many of you have a calling? Either you have it on hold or you're stalling, or you really do feel like you're not where you're supposed to be. Even though we always say you're where you're supposed to be, but sometimes y'all be knowing y'all won't be where you're supposed to be. You know what I mean. For those of you who understand, you understand. And if you don't slow down and listen, transition can feel like chaos. And that's what ends up happening. We just continue to move forward, and our society doesn't support that. That's why it's important for you to support yourself, to create systems where you can support yourself and to have structure. Because if you do not, I'm just going to leave it there. But if you create the space, it becomes transformation. And if you feel like you have never been transformed for the better, we ain't talking about for the words and all that negative energy and feelings. We're not talking about that. But for the best, if you feel that way, it's because structure, systems, and support is missing. And that's why Empower Your Evolution isn't about fixing yourself. Because you're the one who holds the key when it comes to you evolving. Because that's the only way you're going to get to the transformation. And all of this is a part of self-care, y'all. Self-care is much bigger than you think. It is not bubble baths and chocolate cake and massages. Even though massages, I am going to say that's a part of it in different ways. But it's about understanding who you're becoming while life is shifting underneath you. And I want to say too that when it comes to becoming an identity, that I've had more enlightenment about that as of late. Because before, it was more the aesthetic of it. It's like, yeah, okay, I hear you, I understand, I know who I am, but do you know who you are? But it's not who you are, it's who you're becoming, because the past version of you do not have the capacity to where you're going. And not only that, there are some characteristics that you need for the next chapter. Because we all have a story, not to avoid something or to stop something or not to deal with quote unquote certain type of people. Not just that, if anything, it's to how to be, courageous and bodacious and have the audacity to take risks when it comes to your calling. And so if you're in a season where something has ended, changed, or just feel uncertain, if this resonated with y'all, I want you to join me for the Empower Your Evolution webinar. I've been doing these, and this is part of it, but as of the main one, that's happening on Friday, tomorrow at 11:15. And we'll walk you through how to move through transitions with clarity, compassion, and intention instead of burnout and self-abandonment. And the biggest thing is that it all starts with you being transparent. And so remember, you're not falling apart when it comes to transitions. And again, everybody's in different transitions. And I feel like we're always transitioning. But just remember, you are not falling apart. You are evolving. And so if this resonated with you, comment transition, because we want you to be in the room. Because y'all, your calling is waiting on you. And those who need your calling is waiting on you. And we don't want you to be waiting on you no more. Because transitions, again, they can stall you. And again, they reveal things about ourselves. And if you don't take the time to find out, to become curious and inquisitive of what the transition is revealing, then you will be lost. And you'll stay lost. And we don't want that for you. And one way to not be lost is to be in community, but at least to be empowered for your evolution. And for some of you, you may like, I don't need the webinar, just get me into the community. Comment community, and you'll get more information about that. And so I'd like to hear from you all. What have you learned about yourself through a transition? I can't wait to hear from you.